The funeral director handed me a tissue like it was some kind of consolation prize. I stared at the casket, mahogany gleaming under those harsh fluorescent lights, and wondered if 10 years of my life had been worth this moment. My name is Daphne, and I just buried the only person who ever really saw me. She looks so peaceful, Aunt Elizabeth whispered, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Like she's finally free from all that suffering. I wanted to laugh. Grandma Gertrude had been sharp as a tack until the very end, despite what Elizabeth liked to tell people. The suffering had been mine, watching my 20s disappear into a blur of doctor appointments, medication schedules, and sleepless nights while my cousins posted vacation photos on social media. Daphne did such a wonderful job caring for her, Elizabeth continued, her voice carrying that syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. We're all so grateful. Derek, her golden boy, nodded solemnly. At 29, he still lived in his mother's basement, but somehow managed to look down on me. Yeah, it must have been really hard giving up your whole life like that. The way he said it made my skin crawl, like I'd had a choice, like anyone else had stepped up when Grandma started forgetting to turn off the stove. Someone had to do it, I said quietly. Sonia, Elizabeth's daughter, squeezed my shoulder with perfectly manicured nails. Well, now you can finally live your life. Maybe travel, meet someone special. She exchanged a look with her mother that I pretended not to catch. My mother Sarah stood behind them, silent as always. She'd perfected the art of being present without actually being there. When I caught her eye, she looked away quickly, focusing on the flower arrangements like they held the secrets of the universe. The service was everything Grandma would have hated, stuffy, formal, full of people who hadn't visited her in years, suddenly acting like they'd lost their best friend. I sat in the front row, listening to Elizabeth's crocodile tears and Derek's fake eulogy about what an inspiration Grandma had been. After the burial, people filtered back to the house, my house, though I was starting to wonder if anyone else remembered that. Elizabeth had already started rearranging things, moving Grandma's favourite chair to make room for a folding table laden with casseroles from neighbours who barely knew us. "This potato salad is divine," Elizabeth announced to no one in particular. "I should get the recipe." I escaped to Grandma's bedroom, where pill bottles still lined the nightstand like tiny soldiers. Morphine, blood pressure medication, heart pills, the pharmaceutical army that had kept her comfortable in those final months. I started gathering them up, planning to take them to the pharmacy for disposal. That's when Elizabeth appeared in the doorway. "Daphne, honey, we need to talk." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. She wasn't alone. Derek and Sonia flanked her like bodyguards, and Mum hovered behind them, wringing her hands. "What's this about?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Elizabeth pulled out a manila envelope, handling it like it contained the crown jewels. "We found this in your grandmother's papers. Her will." The room went silent except for the tick of Grandma's old clock. I set down the pill bottles carefully, buying myself time to think. "I know what Grandma's will says, Elizabeth." "Do you?" She slid the papers across the dresser, because according to this, the house goes to me. As the eldest daughter, she felt it was appropriate. I stared at the document, my vision blurring slightly. The signature looked right, the letterhead was correct, but something felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. "This doesn't make sense," I whispered. "She promised me." "Promises aren't legal documents," Derek interrupted. "Mum's been managing Grandma's affairs for months. She knew what was best." "Managing her affairs?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "I was here every single day. I gave up everything." "And we're grateful," Elizabeth said smoothly. "But the house needs to stay in the family. Real family." The implication hit like a slap. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something, anything. She studied her shoes like they were the most fascinating things in the world. "I need you to pack your things," Elizabeth continued. "We'll give you an hour to get what you need. The rest can be sorted out later." An hour? 10 years of my life, and she was giving me an hour. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and started throwing clothes into it, my hands shaking with rage and disbelief. They watched me like I might steal something, as if I hadn't earned every single item in this house through blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. As I walked out the front door with my pathetic suitcase, Elizabeth called after me. "This is for the best, dear, you'll see." I didn't turn around. I couldn't let them see the tears, couldn't give them that satisfaction. But as I reached my car, I whispered a promise to the empty street. "We'll see about that." The Sunset Motel wasn't exactly the Ritz, but it was what my credit card could handle. $49 a night for a room that smelled like stale cigarettes and broken dreams. The bedspread had seen better decades, and the air conditioner wheezed like it was on life support. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my suitcase, everything I owned in the world crammed into one piece of luggage. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 10 years accumulating nothing because every penny went to Grandma's care. My phone buzzed. Colin's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered, my voice hoarse from crying. "Jesus, Daphne, I just heard. Are you okay? Where are you?" Colin had been Grandma's neighbour until he'd moved across town after some falling out with Elizabeth years ago. He was one of the few people who'd actually visited during those long years, bringing groceries when I couldn't leave Grandma alone. "I'm at the Sunset Motel on Route 9. "The one with the broken neon sign?" "Christ. Look, you can stay at my place. I'm fine here." I wasn't, but I needed space to think. Baby, this is insane. Everyone knows you took care of her. Everyone knows she wanted you to have that house." Apparently, not everyone. I picked at a loose thread on the bedspread. Elizabeth had a will, official looking, signed the whole thing. "Bullshit. Your grandmother talked about leaving you that house for years. She told half the neighbourhood." Something in his tone made me sit up straighter. "What do you mean?" "I mean people are talking, Daphne, and not in a good way." My stomach clenched. "What kind of talking?" "Elizabeth's been making the rounds, telling people you were manipulative, that you isolated your grandmother, controlled her finances. She's saying you probably forged documents yourself and got caught." The room spun slightly. "She's what?" "I'm sorry, I thought you should know. Mrs. Patterson from the grocery store actually asked me if it was true that you'd been stealing from your grandmother's purse." I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to process this new level of betrayal. "Colin, I would never." "I know that. Anyone with half a brain knows that. But Elizabeth's convincing, and people love drama." After we hung up, I tried calling my mother, straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Same thing. The third time, she finally picked up. "Daphne." "Mum, we need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "Not a good idea," my voice cracked. "Your sister just threw me out of my own house with a forged will, and you think talking isn't a good idea?" Silence stretched between us like a chasm. "It's not forged, honey. I saw your grandmother sign it." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You what?" "She was confused toward the end. You know that. Elizabeth was just looking out for everyone's best interests." "My best interests? Mum, I gave up everything. I haven't been on a date in 3 years. I haven't taken a vacation in a decade. I watched my friends get married and have kids while I measured out pills and changed bedsheets." "No one asked you to do that." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She was your mother too. And she's gone now. Fighting about this won't bring her back. This isn't about bringing her back. This is about justice. This is about... The line went dead. I threw the phone across the room, where it bounced off the wall and clattered to the floor. The screen cracked in a spiderweb pattern which seemed fitting. That's when I remembered the suitcase. I'd packed in such a rage that I'd grabbed things randomly, clothes, toiletries, whatever I could shove in quickly. But there, wedged between my winter coat and a pair of jeans, was a manila folder. My hands shook as I pulled it out. Inside were documents I'd almost forgotten about. Papers Grandma and I had signed 6 months ago during one of her good days. The memory came flooding back. We'd been sitting in Camilla's law office, Grandma's hands steady as she signed document after document. "This is called a transfer on death deed," Camilla had explained. "It means the house transfers directly to Daphne upon your death, bypassing probate entirely. And Elizabeth can't contest it," Grandma had asked, her eyes sharp and focused. "Not if it's properly filed and recorded, which it will be." I'd forgotten about it in the chaos of Grandma's final weeks, when every day was a blur of doctor visits and medication adjustments. But here it was, official and legal, and completely separate from any will Elizabeth might have produced. I spread the papers across the motel's tiny table, reading every word twice. The deed was clear, notarized, and according to the filing stamp, officially recorded with the county 6 months ago. Elizabeth had no idea this existed. I picked up my cracked phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Camilla's number. It was late, but this couldn't wait. "Camilla, it's Daphne. I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning." "Of course, dear. I heard about your grandmother. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you, but that's not why I'm calling." I stared at the deed, feeling something like hope stirring in my chest for the first time in days. "I think we need to discuss that transfer on death deed." "Huh?" Her voice changed, becoming more alert. "Yes, I think we do. Can you be here at 9? After I hung up, I sat back on the bed and looked around the shabby motel room. Tomorrow, everything would change. Elizabeth thought she'd won, thought she'd gotten away with her little scheme. I wiped my eyes and whispered to the empty room, "Now you're going to see how it feels." I drove past the house 3 times before parking across the street. Every window blazed with light, and I could hear laughter spilling out into the night air. Elizabeth's car sat in the driveway next to Derek's pickup truck, like they owned the place. Which, according to them, they did. Through the kitchen window, I watched Elizabeth holding court at Grandma's dining table, my dining table, gesturing wildly with a wineglass in her hand. Derek lounged in Grandma's favourite recliner, feet up like he was king of the castle. Sonia sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone and giggling at something on the screen. They were celebrating. A moving truck had been there earlier, judging by the boxes stacked in the living room. They weren't wasting any time making themselves at home. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, remembering all the nights I'd sat in that same kitchen, feeding Grandma soup when she was too weak to hold the spoon herself. The countless hours I'd spent in that living room, reading to her when her eyes got too tired for books. "Don't let them take what's yours, sweetheart." Grandma's last words to me, whispered when she thought I was asleep in the chair beside her bed. "Promise me?" I'd promised, and I was going to keep that promise. The next morning, Camilla's office smelled like coffee and old leather. She was already waiting when I arrived, the transfer on death deed spread across her mahogany desk. "I filed this myself 6 months ago," she said, tapping the document with her pen. "Your grandmother was very specific about her wishes. She wanted to make sure you were protected." "Protected from what?" Camilla's expression darkened. "From exactly what's happening now. Your grandmother suspected Elizabeth might try something like this." She knew. She'd caught Elizabeth going through her papers several times. Small things at first, looking through bank statements, asking pointed questions about her assets. Your grandmother wasn't fooled. I sank into the leather chair across from her desk. "So the house is really mine?" "Legally, yes. The transfer on death deed supersedes any will. The property transferred to you the moment your grandmother passed away." Camilla leaned forward. But there's something else you need to know. My stomach dropped. What? I've been reviewing your grandmother's financial records. There are some irregularities. She pulled out a thick folder and opened it to reveal bank statements and cancelled checks. Look at these withdrawals. 500 here, 800 there, always signed by Elizabeth as your grandmother's power of attorney. I scanned the papers, my anger building with each entry. How much? Over the past 2 years, nearly $30,000. The number hit me like a punch to the gut. 30,000? Your grandmother never mentioned giving Elizabeth money? Never. She was always worried about having enough for her medical expenses. I thought about all the times I'd paid for groceries out of my own pocket, all the times I'd skipped meals to make sure Grandma had what she needed. There's more. Camilla flipped to another section. Several pieces of jewellery are missing from the safety deposit box inventory. Items your grandmother specifically wanted you to have. Elizabeth took them. I can't prove it yet, but the timing is suspicious. These items were removed just 2 weeks before your grandmother's death. I stared at the evidence spread across the desk, feeling sick. What do we do? First, we contact the police. Elizabeth is currently occupying your property illegally. Second, we file a complaint about the financial irregularities and the missing jewellery. Camilla's voice was crisp, professional. And third, we make sure that Forged will get the attention it deserves. Forged? Oh yes, I've seen your grandmother's signature thousands of times over the years. That will Elizabeth produced? It's a decent fake, but it's still a fake. An hour later, I sat in my car outside the police station, hands shaking as I dialed the non-emergency number. I need to report someone illegally occupying my property, I told the dispatcher. Are you the legal owner of the property, ma'am? Yes, I have the deed right here. We can have an officer meet you there in about 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I drove back to the house and parked in the same spot as the night before. Elizabeth's car was still there, along with Derek's truck. Through the window, I could see them moving around, probably deciding which of Grandma's things to keep and which to throw away. My phone buzzed with a text from Colin. Heard through the grapevine that Elizabeth's telling people you're mentally unstable. Says the stress of caregiving broke you. Just thought you should know. I typed back, thanks for the warning, but I'm not the one who's about to be broken. The police cruiser pulled up just as I hit send. Officer Henderson climbed out, a tall man with kind eyes and greying temples. His partner, a younger woman, followed behind him. You're Daphne? Henderson asked. That's me. I handed him the transfer on death deed. That's my house, and those people inside have no legal right to be there. He studied the document carefully, then looked up at the house where Elizabeth was visible through the kitchen window, still holding her wineglass. All right, he said. Let's go have a conversation. As we walked up the front steps, I caught a glimpse of Elizabeth's face through the window. The wineglass slipped from her hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. This should be interesting, Henderson's partner murmured. I smiled for the first time in days. You have no idea. Officer Henderson knocked on the front door with the kind of authority that made my heart race. I stood behind him, clutching the deed like a lifeline. Elizabeth opened the door with a bright smile that faltered the moment she saw the uniforms. Officers, is everything all right? Ma'am, we need to speak with you about this property. Are you Elizabeth? Yes, but I don't understand. We have a legal document here showing that this house belongs to Daphne. Henderson held up the deed. She's asked us to escort you off the premises. Elizabeth's face went through about 5 different expressions before settling on indignant outrage. That's ridiculous. I have my mother's will right here. The house is mine. Derek appeared behind her, chest puffed out like he was ready for a fight. What's this about? Your cousin has some paperwork that contradicts your mother's will. Henderson's partner explained calmly. Paperwork can be faked, Derek snapped, glaring at me. She's been planning this for months, probably had some shady lawyer forge documents. The transfer on death deed was filed with the county 6 months ago, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's public record. Elizabeth's face went pale. That's impossible. Mother would have told me. Would she? I stepped forward. Like she told you about the $30,000 you withdrew from her accounts. The silence that followed was deafening. Sonia appeared in the hallway behind them, looking confused and scared. What $30,000? Derek demanded. Elizabeth shot me a look that could have melted steel. I don't know what she's talking about. The bank records say otherwise, I replied, along with the missing jewellery from her safety deposit box. You're lying. But Elizabeth's voice cracked slightly. Officer Henderson stepped between us. Ladies, we're not here to litigate financial matters. We're here because this deed shows Daphne as the legal owner of this property. Ma'am, do you have documentation proving your right to be here? Elizabeth fumbled for her purse, pulling out the will with shaking hands. This is my mother's will. It clearly states. Henderson's partner examined it briefly. Ma'am, a will has to go through probate. This transfer on death deed bypasses that entirely. The property transferred automatically upon death. But the will doesn't override a properly filed deed, Henderson finished. I'm going to need you and your family to gather your belongings and vacate the premises. Derek exploded. This is bullshit. She manipulated a sick old woman into signing papers. She probably threatened her. That's enough, Henderson's voice carried a warning. You can contest this through the proper legal channels, but right now you need to leave. We're not going anywhere, Derek stepped forward aggressively. This is our house now. Henderson's hand moved to his belt. Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. This psycho bitch has been planning this for years. She isolated our grandmother, turned her against us. Derek, stop, Sonia whispered, tugging at his arm, but he was on a roll. She's probably been forging checks, stealing money, God knows what else. And now she shows up with fake papers. The papers aren't fake, I said quietly. But that will you're holding, that signature isn't Grandma's. Elizabeth's face went white as paper. How dare you? I watched her sign documents for 10 years. I know her handwriting better than my own. I looked directly at her. You want to keep playing this game? Because I have a lot more evidence where this came from. Henderson stepped forward. All right, that's enough. Ma'am, you have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and leave. If you're not out by then, you'll be arrested for trespassing. This isn't over, Elizabeth hissed as she pushed past me. You think you're so smart? You have no idea what you've started. Actually, I think I'm finishing what you started, I replied. The next 30 minutes were a blur of angry voices, slamming doors and boxes being dragged across the floor. Derek kept muttering threats under his breath, while Sonia cried quietly in the corner. Elizabeth moved through the house like a woman possessed, grabbing things that didn't belong to her. That's my grandmother's china, I said, as she headed for the door with a box. Prove it, she snapped. Henderson's partner gently took the box from her hands. Ma'am, you can sort out personal belongings through your lawyer. Right now, you need to leave. My mother appeared on the sidewalk as they were loading their cars. She stood there watching, her face unreadable. Mum, I called out. She looked at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away without a word. Elizabeth paused at her car door, looking back at the house with pure hatred in her eyes. You want this house so badly? Fine, but don't think this makes you family. You're nothing. You've always been nothing. Maybe, I said, but I'm nothing with a house. As their cars disappeared down the street, Henderson handed me the keys. The property is secure. You might want to change the locks just in case. I stood on the front porch, watching the taillights fade into the distance. The house felt different already, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. But Elizabeth's parting words echoed in my mind. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The first shot came through social media. I woke up to 17 missed calls and a Facebook post that had been shared 43 times overnight, heartbroken to share that my elderly mother was manipulated and abused by her own granddaughter in her final years. Daphne isolated her from family, controlled her finances, and coerced her into signing documents while she was mentally compromised. We're devastated but fighting for justice. Please keep our family in your prayers during this difficult time. Elder abuse. Make it justice for Grandma. The comments were brutal. People I'd gone to high school with, neighbours I'd waved to for years, all expressing their shock and disgust. Someone had even shared the post in the local community Facebook group. My phone rang. Colin. "Have you seen it?" he asked without preamble. "I'm looking at it now." "It gets worse. Check the community page." I switched over and felt my stomach drop. Elizabeth had posted screenshots of what looked like bank statements, with certain transactions highlighted. The amounts were real, but the context was completely twisted. "These are the groceries I bought for Grandma," I said into the phone. "The pharmacy runs, the medical supplies." "I know that, you know that, but to someone just scrolling through, it looks like you were bleeding her dry." The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Patterson from the grocery store, standing on my porch with her arms crossed. "I have to go," I told Colin. Mrs. Patterson didn't wait for me to speak. "I can't believe you'd show your face around here after what you did to that poor woman." "Mrs. Patterson, I don't know what you've heard, but I've heard plenty. Taking money from a sick old lady, keeping her family away. You should be ashamed of yourself." "I took care of her for 10 years. I gave up everything." "You gave up nothing. You lived rent-free in that house while the rest of us work for a living." She turned and walked away, calling over her shoulder, "Don't expect to be welcome in my store anymore." By noon, 3 more neighbours had confronted me. The mailman wouldn't make eye contact. Someone had egged my car. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We know what you did. Karma's coming for you." I called Camila. "I've been expecting your call," she said. "I've seen the posts. Elizabeth's been busy." "Can we sue her for defamation?" "Possibly, but that's not our biggest problem right now. Derek filed a police report this morning claiming you forged the transfer on death deed." My blood ran cold. "What?" "It's clearly retaliatory, but we'll need to address it. I've already contacted Detective Morrison. She wants to meet with us this afternoon." "This is insane. They're the ones who forged the will." "I know, and I have proof. But Daphne, there's something else you need to know." The pause stretched too long. "What?" "I've been digging deeper into Elizabeth's activities. The financial irregularities go back further than we thought. She's been systematically draining your grandmother's accounts for over 3 years. 3 years? And there's more. I found evidence that she tried to have your grandmother declared mentally incompetent last year. She petitioned the court, claiming your grandmother was no longer capable of making financial decisions." "What happened to the petition?" "Your grandmother's doctor refused to sign off on it, said she was completely lucid and capable. But Elizabeth didn't give up. She started shopping around for other doctors." I sank into Grandma's kitchen chair, overwhelmed. "How much money are we talking about?" "Close to $60,000 over 3 years, plus the jewellery, some antique furniture that's missing, and several savings bonds that were cashed out." $60,000? My voice came out as a whisper. "There's a paper trail for all of it. Bank records, forged signatures, falsified medical documents. Elizabeth wasn't just planning to steal the house, Daphne. She was planning to steal everything." That afternoon, Detective Morrison turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who listened without judgment as Camila laid out the evidence. "This is extensive," Morrison said, flipping through the documents. "The forged signatures alone are enough for multiple felony charges." "What about Derek's complaint?" I asked. "Frankly, it looks like a smoke screen. The transfer on death deed has been on file for months. If you'd forged it, you would have done it right after your grandmother's death, not 6 months before." My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. "You can't hide forever. We're watching you." Morrison noticed my expression. "Harassment?" I showed her the text. She frowned and made a note. "I'm going to recommend we move quickly on this," she said. "The social media campaign, the false police report, now harassment. Elizabeth is escalating." "What does that mean?" "It means we're going to arrest her. Tonight." As we left the police station, Camilla pulled me aside. "There's one more thing. I've been in contact with your grandmother's previous lawyer, the one she used before she came to me. Elizabeth approached him 2 years ago, trying to get him to change your grandmother's will. Did he do it?" "No, but he kept detailed notes of the conversation. Elizabeth specifically mentioned wanting to put Daphne in her place and make sure she got what she deserved for thinking she was better than everyone else." I stared at her. She's been planning this for 2 years. At least, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision after your grandmother died. This was a calculated long-term plan to steal your inheritance and destroy your reputation. That evening, I sat in Grandma's living room watching the news. The lead story was about a local family dispute that had torn a community apart. They didn't use names, but everyone would know who they were talking about. My phone rang. The caller ID showed the county courthouse. "Ms. Daphne, this is Clark Services. I wanted to let you know that Elizabeth has filed a civil suit contesting the transfer on death deed. You'll be served with papers tomorrow." After I hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, listening to the house settle around me. Elizabeth wasn't just fighting dirty, she was fighting to destroy me completely. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how much evidence she'd left behind, and tomorrow she was going to find out exactly what that mistake would cost her. The arrest happened at 6 a.m. I knew because Colin called me, breathless with excitement. "They just took Elizabeth away in handcuffs," he said. "Right out of her driveway. Half the neighbourhood was watching." "What about Derek and Sonia?" "Derek's next. Detective Morrison said they're hitting him at his job in an hour." By 8 a.m, my phone was buzzing non-stop. The same people who'd been sharing Elizabeth's posts were now frantically deleting them. Mrs. Patterson left a voicemail that was equal parts apology and curiosity. "Daphne, dear, I may have been hasty yesterday. Perhaps we could talk?" I deleted it without listening to the rest. Camilla called at 9:30. "Elizabeth's been charged with elder abuse, financial exploitation, forgery and fraud. Derek's charges include filing a false police report and conspiracy. They're both being held without bail." "What about Sonia?" "She's cooperating. Apparently, she had no idea how deep this went. She thought her mother was just overly concerned about the inheritance." "Cooperating how?" "She's provided text messages between her and her mother going back 2 years. Elizabeth was very explicit about her plans to teach you a lesson and make sure you got nothing." That afternoon, I drove to the grocery store for the first time since the funeral. Mrs. Patterson practically sprinted over when she saw me. "Daphne, I'm so sorry about yesterday. I had no idea." "You had every idea," I said calmly. "You just believed what you wanted to believe." Her face flushed red, but the Facebook post made it seem so real. "Did you ever ask yourself why I would steal from the woman I spent 10 years caring for? Did you ever wonder why I'd isolate her from family members who never visited anyway?" She opened and closed her mouth like a fish. I thought not. I grabbed a shopping cart and walked away. The whispers followed me through every aisle, but they were different now. Curious, instead of condemning. By the time I reached checkout, 3 people had approached me with awkward apologies. My phone rang as I loaded groceries into my car. Mum's name flashed on the screen. "Daphne, we need to talk." "Now you want to talk? Please, can I come over?" An hour later, she sat in Grandma's kitchen, looking smaller than I remembered. Her hands shook as she reached for the coffee cup I'd set in front of her. "I owe you an apology," she began. "You owe me more than that." Elizabeth said. "She made it sound like you were taking advantage. She showed me bank statements, said you were stealing. And you believed her instead of your own daughter." Mum's eyes filled with tears. "She said you'd been manipulating Mother, turning her against the family. She had documents, Daphne, official-looking papers." "Forged documents. I know that now." She wiped her eyes with a tissue. "But Elizabeth was so convincing, and I owed her money." I set down my coffee cup. "What?" "After your father died, I made some bad investments, lost most of my savings. Elizabeth loaned me $15,000 to keep the house." The pieces clicked into place. "She bought your silence." "She said if I supported her claim to Mother's house, she'd forgive the debt. If I didn't—" Mum's voice trailed off. "She'd destroy you financially." "I'm not proud of it, Daphne, but I was scared. I couldn't lose my house too." I stared at my mother, seeing her clearly for the first time in years, not as the strong woman who'd raised me, but as someone who'd been broken by circumstances and manipulated by her own sister. "Oh, Elizabeth played us all," I said finally. "Can you forgive me?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Colin's name appeared on the screen. "Turn on Channel 7 News," he said without preamble. I grabbed the remote and switched on the TV. A reporter stood outside the courthouse, microphone in hand. Extensive fraud scheme that targeted an elderly woman suffering from health issues. The defendants allegedly stole nearly $60,000 over 3 years and attempted to forge legal documents to steal the victim's home from her primary caregiver. The screen showed Elizabeth's mugshot, then Derek's. Both looked haggard and defeated. The victim's granddaughter, who cannot be named due to the ongoing investigation, spent 10 years caring for her grandmother while the defendants allegedly planned this elaborate scheme. District Attorney Williams says this case highlights the vulnerability of elderly residents and the importance of protecting those who sacrifice to care for family members. Mum stared at the screen. $60,000? Elizabeth's been stealing from Grandma for years. The house was just the final piece. My God, Mum's face went pale. What have I done? You got manipulated by someone who's very good at it. I reached across the table and took her hand. But you're here now. The family's going to be furious. Elizabeth's kids, her husband, all the cousins who supported her. Let them be furious. They picked the wrong side. My phone rang again. This time, it was Detective Morrison. "Daphne, we've got a problem. Elizabeth made bail." My blood ran cold. "How?" "Her husband mortgaged their house. She's out, but there are conditions. No contact with you. Can't come within 500 feet of your property." "What about Derek?" "Still in custody, but Daphne, Elizabeth's lawyer, is already talking about fighting the charges. They're claiming she was acting in your grandmother's best interests, that the money was legitimate caregiving expenses." "That's ridiculous." "I know, but they're going to make this ugly. Are you prepared for that?" I looked at my mother, who was still staring at the TV screen in shock, then at the kitchen where I'd spent countless nights feeding Grandma soup and reading her stories. "Detective Morrison, I've been preparing for this my whole life." After I hung up, Mum squeezed my hand. "What can I do to help?" "Tell the truth," I said. "That's all any of us can do now." But even as I said it, I knew the truth was going to hurt a lot of people before this was over. The civil suit lasted 3 months. 3 months of depositions, document reviews, and Elizabeth's lawyer trying to paint me as a master manipulator who'd brainwashed a helpless old woman. It fell apart in spectacular fashion. Camilla had done her homework. She presented bank records showing Elizabeth's systematic theft, medical records proving Grandma's mental competency, and testimony from Dr. Richards, who treated Grandma for 5 years. Mrs. Gertrude was sharp as a tack until the day she died, Dr. Richards testified. She knew exactly what she was doing when she signed that deed. In fact, she specifically asked me to document her mental state because she was worried about family members challenging her decisions. Elizabeth's lawyer tried one last desperate move, claiming the transfer on death deed was signed under duress. Your Honour, Camilla stood up with a manila folder. I'd like to present video evidence. The courtroom went silent. Elizabeth's face went white. Video evidence? The judge asked. Mrs. Gertrude insisted on recording the signing ceremony. She wanted to make sure there could be no question about her intentions or mental state. The video was devastating. Grandma sitting upright and alert, speaking directly to the camera. My name is Gertrude Quinn, and I am of sound mind and body. I am signing this transfer on death deed of my own free will, because my granddaughter Daphne has sacrificed everything to care for me. She deserves this house, and I want to make sure she gets it without any interference from family members who couldn't be bothered to visit. Elizabeth's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The judge dismissed the civil suit within an hour. The transfer on death deed is valid and legally binding, he ruled. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for additional fraud charges. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Elizabeth pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," she screamed at me. "You think you've won? You've destroyed this family. You're nothing but a vindictive little—" "Ma'am, you need to step back," Detective Morrison appeared, placing herself between Elizabeth and me. "You're violating your restraining order." "I don't care about your restraining order. She's a liar and a thief, and everyone's going to know it." "Elizabeth, stop!" Her lawyer grabbed her arm. "You're making it worse." But she was beyond reason. "You want to know the truth? Your precious grandmother hated you. She told me so herself, said you were a burden, that she wished she'd never—" "That's enough!" Detective Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. "You're under arrest for violating a protective order." As they led Elizabeth away in handcuffs for the second time, she turned back to me with pure venom in her eyes. "You'll get what's coming to you, mark my words." The criminal trial was swift. With Sonia's testimony, the bank records and the video evidence, Elizabeth's defence crumbled. She was sentenced to 5 years for elder abuse and fraud. Derek got 2 years for conspiracy and filing false reports. I thought it was over. I was wrong. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening. Colin's voice was tight with worry. "Daphne, you need to know something. There's talk at the family reunion planning meeting." "What kind of talk?" "Elizabeth's extended family, her cousins, her husband's brothers. They're saying you orchestrated this whole thing to frame her, that you're the real criminal." "That's insane." "I know, but they're planning something. I heard them talking about making things right and teaching you a lesson." "Are you sure?" "Sure enough that I think you should be careful. Maybe stay somewhere else for a few days." That night, someone threw a brick through my kitchen window. The note attached read, "Thief, we know what you did." I called Detective Morrison. "We'll increase patrols in your area," she promised. "But Daphne, you might want to consider that security system we talked about." The harassment escalated over the next week. Dead flowers on my doorstep, my car tyres slashed, anonymous calls at all hours. Then Mom stopped answering her phone. I drove to her house and found her sitting in her living room, staring at the wall. "Mom, what's wrong?" "They came by yesterday," she said without looking at me. "Elizabeth's family. They said I was a traitor, that I'd betrayed my own sister for money." "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that Elizabeth was stealing from Mother, that she forged documents. Mum's voice was hollow. They didn't want to hear it. Mum, they said I was dead to them, all of them, 40 years of family relationships gone. She finally looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed. Was it worth it, Daphne? Was proving you were right worth destroying everything? The question hit me like a physical blow. I looked around the empty house, thought about the family members who wouldn't speak to me, the neighbours who still whispered when I walked by. I don't know, I admitted. I can't do this anymore. Mum stood up slowly. I'm moving to Florida. My sister Janet said I could stay with her until I figure things out. You're leaving? I can't stay here. Every time I go to the store, someone asks me about Elizabeth, about you, about what really happened. She picked up a suitcase I hadn't noticed. I need to start over somewhere else. Mum, please. I'm sorry, Daphne. I know you were right. I know Elizabeth was wrong, but being right doesn't make this hurt any less. She kissed my cheek and walked out the door. I stood alone in her empty living room, listening to her car drive away, and wondered if winning had been worth losing everything else. Outside, storm clouds gathered, and I realized the real reckoning was just beginning. The house felt like a mausoleum. Every room echoed with memories of people who were no longer speaking to me. I sat in Grandma's chair, holding the deed that had cost me my family, wondering if she would have wanted this. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Sonia standing on my porch, looking nervous and thin. She'd lost weight since the trial, and her usual perfect makeup was nowhere to be seen. I know you probably don't want to see me, she said when I opened the door. You're right, I don't. Please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She perched on the edge of the couch like she might bolt at any moment. I wanted to apologize for everything. Your mother's in prison, Sonia. Your brother lost his job. I think we're past apologies. I know, but I need you to understand. I really didn't know how bad it was. Mum told me you were being difficult about the inheritance, that Grandma had changed her mind about leaving you the house, and you believed her. She's my mother. Sonia's voice cracked. I trusted her. When she showed me those bank statements, when she said you were stealing, I wanted to believe her because the alternative was admitting my mother was a criminal. I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse there. Why are you here, Sonia? Because I found something. She pulled out a small wooden box. I was cleaning out Mom's house before the bank takes it. This was hidden in her bedroom closet. Inside the box were pieces of Grandma's jewellery, the missing items from the safety deposit box. But there was something else. A letter written in Grandma's shaky handwriting. My dearest Daphne, I read aloud, if you're reading this, then Elizabeth has probably tried to take what's rightfully yours. I'm not surprised. She's been jealous of you since you were born, jealous of how much I love you, jealous of the woman you've become. Don't let her bitterness poison your heart. You are the best of us, and you deserve every happiness. The house is yours not because you earned it through sacrifice, but because you are my heart, walking around outside my body. Love always, Grandma. My hands shook as I finished reading. Sonia was crying quietly. She hid this from you, Sonia whispered. Mum found it in Grandma's things and kept it. She was going to destroy it, but I guess she couldn't bring herself to do it. Why are you giving this to me? Because it's yours. Because you deserved better from all of us. She stood up, wiping her eyes. And because I'm tired of being part of this family's ugliness. After she left, I sat holding the letter, feeling something shift inside my chest. The anger that had sustained me for months was finally loosening its grip. Colin knocked on the door an hour later, carrying a bottle of wine and a pizza. Figured you might need some company, he said, and carbs. We sat in the kitchen, eating pizza off paper plates like we were college students again. Sonia stopped by, I told him. Yeah, how'd that go? I showed him the letter. He read it twice, then looked up at me with something like wonder. "She really loved you." I know, I always knew, but somewhere along the way, I forgot that love wasn't about what I could prove or what I could win. So what now? Now I figure out how to live in this house without it feeling like a monument to everything I've lost. Colin reached across the table and took my hand. "You haven't lost everything." "Haven't I? My mother won't speak to me. Half the family thinks I'm a criminal. The other half thinks I'm a vindictive bitch who destroyed Elizabeth for revenge." "And what do you think?" I considered the question seriously. "I think I did what I had to do. Elizabeth was stealing from Grandma, forging documents, planning to throw me out with nothing. I couldn't let that stand. But maybe I could have handled it differently. Maybe I didn't have to enjoy watching her world fall apart quite so much." Colin squeezed my hand. "You're human, Daphne. You were hurt and angry, and you fought back. That doesn't make you a bad person." "Doesn't make me a good one either." "Actually, it kind of does. You spent 10 years caring for someone who needed you. You gave up your 20s, your social life, your chance at a normal relationship. You did that out of love, not obligation." I looked around the kitchen, seeing it differently now. Not as a prize I'd won, but as a home I'd helped create through years of shared meals and quiet conversations. "I'm thinking about turning Grandma's room into a library," I said. "She always wanted more bookshelves." "That sounds perfect." "And maybe I'll start a support group for people who are caregivers. God knows this town could use one." Colin smiled. "Now you're talking." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment my heart raced, expecting another threat. Instead, it was from Mum. "Settled in Florida. It's warm here. Maybe you could visit sometime. I miss you." I showed Colin the message. "See," he said, "not everything is lost." I typed back, "I'd like that. I miss you too." As the sun set through the kitchen window, I realized something had changed. The house didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It felt like a beginning. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said to Colin. "What's that?" "I spent so much time fighting for this house that I forgot why I wanted it in the first place." "And why did you want it?" I looked at Grandma's letter, still lying on the table between us. "Because it was home. Because it was where someone loved me unconditionally. Because it was where I learned that taking care of people you love isn't a sacrifice, it's a privilege." Colin raised his wine glass. "To Grandma Gertrude, and to new beginnings." "To justice," I added, "and to knowing the difference between justice and revenge." We clinked glasses as the first stars appeared outside the window, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The house was mine, but more importantly, I was finally mine again too.
Hi, I'm Hazel. I'm 32 and 9 months pregnant with my first baby. Life has been tough lately, and I want to share my story in case it helps anyone else who's going through something similar. I live in San Francisco with my husband, Michael. He's 34 and works as a software engineer. Even though our life might look perfect from the outside, it's actually very difficult. Michael doesn't support me emotionally or help around the house. Most weekends, he's at his parents' house, leaving me to handle everything on my own. Even though I'm pregnant, I love photography, and taking photos of my daily life gives me some happiness. But Michael's lack of support and constant criticism often overshadow that joy. One night, Michael came home and demanded that I go buy beer from the store. I was tired and felt uncared for, but I agreed to go. On the way, I felt hurt and wondered why he couldn't go himself. But I knew arguing with him would only make things worse. When I came back, Michael barely noticed my effort and kept criticizing me. His words hurt a lot, but I tried not to cry. Our relationship had been getting worse, and his behavior was becoming more hurtful. The next morning, Michael acted like nothing happened. He was cheerful and didn't acknowledge the previous night. I decided to cook a special dinner to make things better. I spent the whole day preparing his favorite meal, but when he came home drunk, he insulted me and questioned my worth as a wife and mother. I felt even more isolated and unsupported as my due date got closer. Michael wanted to go on a family trip with his parents, and even though I was worried about traveling so close to my delivery, he ignored my concerns. His parents, who often criticized me, agreed with him. On the day of the trip, my water broke, and I was scared. I told Michael we needed to go to the hospital right away, but instead of helping, he kicked me out of the car, angry that I might mess it up. I felt completely abandoned. Thankfully, our neighbor Na saw me in trouble. Na, who was married to Michael's boss, rushed to help and called an ambulance. She stayed with me at the hospital and offered comfort while I gave birth. Her support was crucial during such a vulnerable time. In the hospital, as I held my baby, I couldn't stop thinking about Michael's neglect and his family's criticism. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. Na became a close friend and supported me through everything. She even told her husband about what happened, which was important later on. A video of Michael kicking me out of the car went viral and the public backlash was huge. Michael lost his job, struggled to find new work, and faced a lot of public shaming. His behavior had severe consequences and his reputation was damaged. Meanwhile, I found support from my parents and Na. They encouraged me to think about my future and my baby's well-being. I started considering divorce, realizing it was the best option for us. The strong evidence and public pressure made the divorce process easier, and Michael and his family reluctantly agreed to the terms. After my baby was born, my life began to change for the better. I knew I had to make decisions that were right for me and my child. Michael's behavior had become unacceptable, and I had to think about our future. Na continued to support me, visiting the hospital, bringing meals, and offering encouragement. Her husband, Mark, who is the CFO at Michael's former company, also supported me. It was comforting to know they both understood how serious the situation was. After I left the hospital, I moved in with my parents. They are older but very supportive and welcomed me and my baby with open arms. Their home in San Francisco became a safe and comforting place for us. I felt overwhelmed with gratitude for their care and love. As I settled in, I thought a lot about how I ended up here. The viral video of Michael kicking me out of the car had drawn a lot of attention, and the backlash against him was intense. He lost his job, had trouble finding new work, and faced a lot of public shame. Knowing that others saw his true behavior was a small comfort, but it didn't lessen the pain of his betrayal. Despite the chaos, I found peace in my new routine. My parents were wonderful, helping with the baby and giving me emotional support. I also grew closer to Na. She visited often, and our talks became a source of strength for me. She shared her own experiences and gave me advice, becoming a true friend. During this time, I began to think about my legal options. Na suggested talking to a lawyer about divorce. It was a scary thought, but I knew it was necessary for my baby's future. I found a compassionate lawyer who understood my situation. We discussed the details of my marriage, and I showed the evidence of Michael's neglect and abuse. The divorce process began, and it was relatively straightforward due to the public pressure and the viral video. Michael and his family had little choice but to agree to the terms. The process was a relief, though emotionally draining. Meanwhile, I started finding joy in small things again. My passion for photography was rekindled, and I took many pictures of my baby, capturing precious moments. These photos were a reminder of the new life I was building. One day, while walking with Na, she introduced me to her son, Jake. He was around my age, and we quickly became friends. Jake was kind and understanding, qualities I had missed in my relationship with Michael. He often helped me with the baby and offered to babysit, giving me some much-needed time to myself. Our friendship grew, and it started to turn into something more. Jake made me laugh and reminded me that there are good people in the world. My parents also liked him and were happy to see me smile again. It was a slow process, but I was beginning to heal. Na and Mark were incredibly supportive during this time. They helped me with single motherhood and the emotional aftermath of my divorce. Mark gave practical advice, while Na provided a listening ear and warmth. Despite the challenges, I felt empowered, taking control of my life and making decisions for me and my baby. The pain from Michael's neglect and abuse was still there, but it no longer defined me. I was stronger than I had realized. As I adjusted to life as a new mother and dealt with the fallout from my marriage, I found strength in the support around me. My parents, Na and Jake, were my constants, helping me through the toughest days. The divorce was moving forward, though it was emotionally taxing. Michael's family denied his behavior and tried to blame me for everything. Even though it was hard dealing with their criticism, I knew I had to stay strong for my baby. One morning, my lawyer called to tell me that Michael wanted to discuss the divorce settlement. I was nervous but agreed to meet if our lawyers were present. Facing Michael again made me anxious, but it was necessary. The meeting was tense. Michael looked worn out and bitter, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong. His words hurt, but I reminded myself that he was the one who had abandoned me. Our lawyers helped keep the discussion civil. Michael agreed to the terms, including child support and visitation rights. I felt a huge relief as this marked the end of a painful chapter in my life. When I got home, my parents were eager to hear about the meeting. Sharing the details with them felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. My mother hugged me and said, "You're so strong, Hazel. We're proud of you." Their support was a great comfort. My relationship with Jake continued to grow. He was a positive presence in my life, and one evening he told me, "Hazel, you're amazing. You've been through so much, and yet you're still standing. I admire your strength." His words touched me deeply. For the first time in a long time, I felt appreciated and seen. Our bond grew stronger, and soon our friendship blossomed into something more. Jake became a loving part of my baby's life, and my parents were happy to see me happy. However, not everything was easy. Michael's parents kept interfering, calling and demanding to see their grandchild. They refused to accept the damage Michael had caused and acted as if nothing had changed. Dealing with their criticism was exhausting, but I stood firm, setting boundaries to protect my peace. One day, Na invited me over for coffee. We sat in her warm and welcoming kitchen, and she asked how I was doing. I told her about my struggles with Michael's parents and the difficulties of being a single mother. She listened carefully and then said, "Hazel, you've come so far. Don't let anyone take away your peace. You have every right to protect your happiness and your child's well-being." Her words were empowering. Na had become more than just a neighbor. She was a mentor and a true friend. Her husband Mark also helped by advising me on legal matters and explaining my rights. As the months went by, I grew stronger and more confident. I began taking on freelance photography projects, something I had always wanted to do. It felt great to pursue my passion and support my baby. Each photo I took was a sign of the new life I was building. My relationship with Jake continued to grow. He was patient, kind, and truly cared for me and my baby. One evening, while watching the sunset, he looked at me and said, "Hazel, I love you. I know it's been tough, but I want to be there for you and for both of you every step of the way." Tears came to my eyes as I realized how far I had come from feeling abandoned and neglected. I was now surrounded by love and support. I looked at Jake and said, "I love you too. Thank you for being here, for everything." After months of struggle and resilience, my life began to improve. The divorce was finalized and I was finally free from the toxic relationship that had held me back for so long. The day the papers were signed was bittersweet. I felt a sense of loss but also an overwhelming relief. My lawyer, who had been a steady support, said, "This is a new beginning, Hazel. You're doing the right thing for yourself and your child." With the divorce behind me, I focused on creating a stable and happy life for my baby and me. My freelance photography work started to grow, and I found joy in capturing special moments for others. Each project brought me closer to independence and self-fulfillment. Jake continued to be a constant source of support and love. He understood my past and respected my journey. One evening, while having dinner with my parents, Jake proposed to me. It was a simple, heartfelt moment. "Hazel, will you marry me?" he asked, his eyes full of hope. I didn't hesitate. "Yes, Jake, I will," I replied, tears of happiness streaming down my face. My parents were overjoyed, and my heart felt full. Na and Mark were thrilled for us as well. Na, who had been there from the start, gave me a tight hug and said, "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Hazel." I was grateful every day for the unexpected turn our relationship had taken and for the support of everyone around me. Michael and his parents kept trying to interfere, but I stood my ground and set clear boundaries. With Mark's legal advice and support, I made sure they respected our space. Their criticism no longer affected me. I was stronger and more confident, ready to protect my peace and my child's well-being. As time went on, I settled into a new routine. My days were filled with photography sessions, joyful moments with Jake, and the simple pleasures of watching my child grow. Jake was a wonderful father figure, and our home was full of love and happiness. One day, while sitting in Na's garden, we reflected on how much had changed. "You've come so far, Hazel. I'm so proud of you," she said, smiling. I looked around at the beautiful flowers and felt a deep sense of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Na. Your friendship means everything to me," I replied. My past, marked by neglect and emotional abuse, had transformed into a story of empowerment and independence. I had found my voice and strength. My life was now surrounded by supportive people who loved me for who I was. To anyone listening, I want to say, no matter how dark and difficult things may seem, there is always hope. Surround yourself with those who uplift and support you. Take it one step at a time and never forget your worth. Empowerment and happiness are within your reach. Thank you for following my journey.
Hello, my name is Cheryl. I'm a 33-year-old writer, and my first mystery novel was a huge success. I've been married to my husband Thomas for 8 years, and we have a 7-year-old son named Gary. At first, Thomas had a job, but he quit a few years ago when my writing career took off. This allowed him to stay at home, although he sometimes went out to play slot machines. Lately, I've been dealing with a troubling situation. Thomas has been having an affair and buying expensive gifts for his mistress using my credit card. I've put up with this for our son's sake, but now it's too much for me to handle. One morning, Thomas put on a suit, which was strange since he was unemployed. When I asked him about it, he seemed surprised, but then said he was going for a job interview and might start contributing financially again. I wished him luck, hoping this was a positive change. However, my trust wavered when you returned home at 2 a.m., leaving me awake and filled with doubts. While working late to meet a deadline, my heart sank when Thomas came home well past midnight, reeking of alcohol and perfume. He collapsed on the living room sofa, his phone in his hand, unlocked. Driven by suspicion and disbelief, I looked at his phone. The texts I saw confirmed my fears. Thomas was having an affair. The pain was even worse when I realized his lover was my close friend, Gloria. The messages showed they had dined at a fancy restaurant known for its romantic views, a place he had never taken me. The shock hit me hard, and tears filled my eyes as I dealt with the betrayal of two people I trusted deeply. Gloria, who was married herself, had always been a confidant. In quiet turmoil, I quickly forwarded the evidence to my phone, needing time to think and plan my next steps carefully. The next morning, Thomas acted like nothing had happened. I approached him casually and said, "Hey, Thomas, about yesterday. You said you had an interview but came home quite late. What happened?" He avoided eye contact, clearly searching for an excuse. "Actually, I ran into a friend after the interview, and we ended up going for a drink," he muttered. "A friend? Someone I don't know?" I probed, even though I already knew the answer. "I don't have to explain everything, do I?" He snapped back. "Yeah, you're right," I replied, feeling frustrated and resigned. His evasion confirmed my worst fears about his ongoing deceit with Gloria. A month after discovering the painful truth about Thomas' affair, I was still struggling with what to do. Confronting him could mean the end of our marriage. In different circumstances, I might have shown him the evidence and filed for divorce already. But our son Gary, only 7 years old, was my main concern. I couldn't bear the thought of taking his father away from him at such a young age. Meanwhile, Thomas seemed to take advantage of my busy schedule. He started leaving the house more often while I was consumed with writing in my room. This hurt, but it also gave me a chance to gather more evidence of his infidelity. During one of his outings, I went through his belongings and found receipts for luxury women's items, none of which were in our home or given to me. It was clear he was buying these for Gloria, but the source of the funds was confusing since he had no job and was living off my earnings. I didn't have much extra money left for extravagant expenses, but I needed to find out more about what was going on. I decided to follow Thomas, but first, I needed someone to look after Gary. I called my brother, who didn't know anything about the situation. "I'm sorry for calling you over so suddenly," I apologized when he arrived. "No, I don't mind, but what's up? You suddenly said you want me to look after Gary," he said, looking confused. "There's something I really need to go shopping for on my own," I explained, making up a story. "Shopping? You've never been materialistic. You usually shop online," he said, sounding skeptical. "I know," I replied, feeling a little guilty for lying. But I knew it was necessary to protect my family and uncover the full extent of Thomas's betrayal. In the chilly early morning, with my heart heavy with doubt, I asked my brother for a favor. "I need to pick something up from a store today, something I can't order online. Can you watch Gary for a bit? I tried to keep my voice light, hiding the real reason I needed to leave the house. Of course, but try to come back soon, okay? Gary might start missing you, my brother responded, concern clear in his voice. Thanks so much, I said, truly grateful despite the turmoil inside me. With my brother's help, I was free to find out the truth about Thomas's activities. Blending into the crowd, I followed Thomas from a safe distance. With each step he took toward his destination, my heart sank further. My worst fears were confirmed when I saw him happily walking into an upscale boutique with Gloria, arm in arm. Seeing them so close was a harsh blow. As they laughed and looked at items, Thomas walked to the cashier. I watched, hidden behind a display, as he confidently handed over a credit card. It was the card from the back of my drawer, meant only for emergencies. This card, which I rarely used, had been his secret tool for making all these extravagant purchases. The realization hit me. I had been so focused on my writing and deadlines that I hadn't been watching our finances closely. Significant charges had built up on the card from my recent work-related expenses, and all this time, Thomas had been adding his deceitful transactions to the bill. Both of our cards were linked to the same account, and I had missed the signs of his betrayal hidden among my expenses. Stunned by the depth of his deceit, I realized Thomas had not only betrayed my trust romantically but had also abused my financial resources. The last bit of affection I had for him disappeared. I blamed myself for not noticing sooner and for allowing his deceit to go unchecked. Realizing this double betrayal was hard to accept and marked a turning point in how I saw our marriage. Despite all the evidence, I couldn't forgive Thomas. With a heavy heart, I took discreet photos of his moments with Gloria before heading home. In the days that followed, I focused on devising a plan to confront him. Whenever he was out, I searched his PC for more clues. Since his phone and computer were linked, I could easily access their communications. It wasn't long before I uncovered plans for a getaway with Gloria over the upcoming holiday, a 6-day trip. This is my chance, I muttered to myself, feeling a mix of determination and despair. I planned to confront Thomas and settle matters while he was away with his lover. However, I faced a big challenge: our son, Gary. I needed to make sure he was protected from the painful truth about his father's affair, and carrying out my plan without him finding out would be tricky. Reluctantly, I decided to ask my brother for help again. I hate to ask, but can you look after Gary during the upcoming holidays? I asked, trying to sound casual. The holidays? You mean all 6 days? He asked, sounding suspicious. Yes, I have something important to handle, I replied, trying to hide my anxiety. Something important, huh? He gave me a look that suggested he knew more than I had told him. His next words caught me off guard. Cheryl, you don't have to handle everything by yourself. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Thomas is cheating, isn't he? He said bluntly. My heart skipped a beat. How did you? I stammered, but he cut me off. I heard it from Gary, he said softly. Gary, my son, knew. Even though he was just a child, he had picked up on enough to realize something was wrong. He had seen his father getting close to someone who wasn't me, and it had upset him. My brother's revelation was a stark reminder of how sensitive and observant children can be. Even at a young age, Gary had sensed the tension and sadness in our home, making the emotional situation even more complicated. I had thought I was shielding Gary from the turmoil at home. Why? My brother pressed gently, his words cutting through my defenses. Thomas's actions have hurt you enough for even Gary to notice. Are you considering staying with him? As I wrestled with the idea of divorce, fearing it would deeply affect Gary, my son unexpectedly walked into the room. It's okay, Mom. I'm on your side, he said, his young voice resolute. I don't want anyone who makes you sad, Mom. As long as I have you, I'm fine. His words, so mature for his age, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Gary, I managed, my voice thick with emotion. Turning to my brother, I added, and thank you too. With the support of my son and brother, I found the courage to face what needed to be done. Gary and I began to plan our move, timing it for when Thomas would be away on his trip with Gloria. My brother helped us pack discreetly, making sure everything was ready for a swift departure. The evening before Thomas was set to leave, I decided it was time to confront him directly. I found him packing a suitcase in our bedroom. Thomas, why are you packing a suitcase? What's going on? I asked, pretending not to know. Oh, this? I'm going on a trip with some friends starting tomorrow, he replied, avoiding my gaze. A trip? Why didn't you mention this earlier? I pushed, trying to get more details. It was a last-minute plan, nothing serious. I'm using my monthly allowance for it, he said dismissively, trying to end the conversation. Despite his discomfort, he continued to hide the truth. I took a deep breath, and in a calm, determined voice that I rarely used, I asked, Are you sure it's just with your friends? Thomas visibly tensed, his shoulders twitching with nerves. Despite his obvious unease, he stubbornly clung to his lie. Yes, just friends, he insisted, though his voice wavered. All right, I understand. Enjoy your trip with your friends, I said, the irony not lost in my tone. I would have enjoyed it anyway, he muttered, but his assurance sounded forced. With everything laid bare, I knew what needed to be done. My brother, my son, and my resolve had set the stage for a new beginning, free from deceit. Even though Thomas hadn't brought it up, it was essential to be accountable. As I stepped out of my husband's room, wrestling with my thoughts, I reflected on how things might have been different. If he had been truthful from the start, perhaps we could have parted amicably, discussing alimony and child support. Despite his betrayal, there was a time when my love for him was deep. He had been my rock when my novel initially failed to make an impact. I didn't want to feel bitter towards Thomas, but I had to protect myself and my son. It was clear that it was time for me to make a decisive move and not hold back any longer, especially after discovering more of his lies. The next morning, after Thomas left for his trip, I checked the drawer and saw that he had taken my credit card again. I acted quickly, calling the credit card company to report it as lost and had it canceled. When my son woke up, his eyes sparkled with excitement. He asked, "Mom, today's the day, right? The day we moved to our new house?" Any lingering doubts I had vanished in that moment. "Yes, Gary," I smiled, reassured by his enthusiasm. "I've canceled the credit card, and now it's time for us to start fresh in our new home." With my brother's help, the move was easy. We took our belongings to our new house while my husband's things were sent elsewhere. The next day, as we settled into our new place with my son and brother, I felt a profound sense of peace and excitement for the future. When Thomas called, his voice sounded hesitant. "Hello, Cheryl. Well, this trip is turning out to be more expensive than I thought. Could you send me some money?" I immediately knew he was having money troubles because I had frozen the credit card. He was trying to avoid admitting the truth about using the card without permission, and his indirect request for money was annoying. "Did you plan for this trip on your own?" I asked calmly. "I'm sorry, but I can't give you any money." He sounded frustrated. "Don't be like that. If you don't help me, I'll be the only one not enjoying this trip," he said. Then he corrected himself. You'll be the only one." Even over the phone, his confusion was obvious. "You're on a trip, and you want to show off the good parts, right? Well, the card you took is no longer valid, so you'll have to manage." "What are you talking about, Cheryl? What card?" He pretended not to know. "Pretending you don't know won't help," I said firmly. "You're panicking because you're saying things that don't make sense. I don't know anything about a card." "Enough," I exclaimed, my patience wearing thin. "I already know you've been cheating on me with my best friend, Gloria. Did you think I had no idea? It's obvious." "No, it's not what you think. I'm not cheating," he tried to assure me, his voice desperate. I was furious that he continued to deny everything. Standing there with my brother and son next to me, all my pent-up anger erupted. "Stop making excuses. You had a family and you cheated with another woman, and you've been using someone else's credit card. Do you even realize how despicable your actions are?" "Cheryl, let's calm down for a moment," he tried to soothe, but it was too late. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. How can I remain calm when I'm dealing with the person I despise the most? I seethed into the phone. "Just so you're aware, I have no intention of forgiving you or offering you any help. As for her, she can find her way elsewhere. Never show your face to Gary and me again." With those final words, I hung up on my husband. Moments later, his mistress, Gloria, called. "Hey, Cheryl, what on earth did you do?" "Ah, Gloria, long time no see. How's your trip going with my husband?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Shut up and explain yourself. What are you talking about?" she snapped back. "Don't play dumb. You received Thomas's things at your house, didn't you?" I replied. When we moved out, I had arranged for all my husband's belongings to be sent directly to Gloria's address. Since Gloria was also married, her husband was naturally there to receive the delivery. That's why I sent everything there, along with a detailed letter explaining the whole situation. She yelled back, her voice cracking under stress. "This isn't a joke. What have you done?" My husband found out, and now he's furious. "Well, you brought this upon yourself by choosing to have an affair while married. You were supposed to be my friend, and this is a betrayal," I retorted. "You're the worst. I misjudged you," she accused. "Excuse me? That's rich coming from you. My best friend having an affair with my husband. How could you expect any forgiveness?" "I didn't mean it seriously. It was just a joke. I would never actually be interested in someone like him," she tried to downplay it. "I don't care if it was a joke or not. I'm filing for divorce anyway, and yes, you did have an affair. That's a fact. I'll never forgive you, and I'll be seeking significant compensation, so be prepared." "Compensation? What are you talking about? I didn't agree to anything like that," she protested. "Well, you're going to hear about it soon enough. "It's what you deserve," I concluded as she realized the gravity of the situation. "I'm a housewife. I can't pay any compensation," she pleaded, her voice filled with desperation. "I don't care. Figure it out yourself or ask your husband, though I doubt he'll be much help," I said sharply. "Oh, wait. Goodbye." I hung up before she could respond and promptly blocked her number. Later, I contacted my lawyer to finalize my divorce and sought compensation from my ex-husband and Gloria, along with child support. I also demanded repayment for the unauthorized credit card charges. The financial strain was too much for Gloria's marriage. After settling the compensation, her husband filed for divorce, and she found herself without a home. She sought refuge with her parents, but they were disappointed by her actions and turned her away. With limited options, Gloria now lives where she works, taking up night shifts at a local bar. Thomas, too, sought comfort from Gloria during this turbulent time, but overwhelmed by her crisis and furious with him for causing her divorce, she ended their relationship. Thomas is now juggling several part-time jobs, struggling to make ends meet. His long period of unemployment has hindered his ability to find stable work. Should he ever fall behind on his alimony or child support payments, I am prepared to pursue what he owes without hesitation. As for myself, life has settled into a peaceful rhythm in our new home with my son. He's growing up fast, and each day is filled with new joys and adventures. My primary focus is on providing him with all the love and stability he needs, ensuring he never has to face the kind of turmoil we've gone through again. Our days are brighter now, and I'm committed to making sure they stay that way.
I was completely taken aback when my husband Jonathan unexpectedly suggested that I should move back to my parents' house, even though they were already living with us. His sudden declaration left me stunned, yet he seemed to think he was being entirely rational. He bluntly asked, "Do you have a problem with that? Don't argue with me. I'm fine with divorcing you if you do." His recent behavior had been cold and distant, and I had my grievances too. I had considered the possibility of divorce myself, but it didn't seem right for him to force me out of our home. As I stood there in shock, I thought to myself, I'm the one paying $3,200 for our expenses. Does he even acknowledge that? He grew agitated and demanded, "Leave this house now. My parents won't feel comfortable with you here." I couldn't understand why I needed to leave, but I agreed, saying, "Okay, I'll take all my belongings with me." Once I consented, he appeared pleased and abruptly said, "Then do it," before walking away. Immediately, I contacted a store to sell my things. My name's Betty, and I live with Jonathan, who is 3 years my senior. We met through mutual friends, and what started as a casual meeting quickly evolved into spending an entire day together. Jonathan expressed his aspirations of becoming a voiceover artist, and I was captivated by his resonant voice. I've always had a fondness for soothing tones. It seemed he felt the same attraction, as we exchanged numbers and planned more outings. Before long, we found ourselves in a relationship almost effortlessly, without ever formally discussing it. I had just graduated from college when we met, and dating someone with a bit more life experience like Jonathan was thrilling. My friend Laura expressed concerns about our 3-year age difference, but I assured her it was no big deal. I genuinely liked Jonathan and felt his affection in return, so I wasn't worried. Eventually, Laura came around, trusting my judgment. Jonathan and I had been together for 2 years when he broached the subject of marriage. I had already spoken to my parents about him, including his age, and they were eager to meet him, harboring high hopes for our future. I often wondered when he would propose, and it turned out to be during one of his regular visits to my apartment. We were just lounging and enjoying each other's company. It wasn't the most romantic setting, but it was very much Jonathan's style, and I was fine with it. When he popped a question, I simply responded, "Sure, let's get married." Perhaps we both approached the whole thing with a laid-back attitude. After the proposal, we visited each other's parents. However, I didn't quite click with Jonathan's family. When we arrived at his parents' home, the place was decorated with items that seemed to mimic old-fashioned luxury, but felt insincere. His parents were dressed in costly attire and adorned with flashy jewelry, giving off an air of trying too hard to appear affluent. Our tastes and values appeared to be quite different, and I doubted we'd get along well. During the visit, Jonathan's mother even made a disparaging remark about my appearance, which was hurtful. I was taken aback by the behavior of the family of the man I intended to marry, but ultimately, I reminded myself that I was committing to Jonathan, not his family. As Jonathan and I prepared to get married, I reassured myself that it was okay if I didn't particularly enjoy his parents' company. I wouldn't have to spend much time with them, so I chose not to let it trouble me excessively. After our wedding, as we settled into our new condo, I noticed that Jonathan seemed preoccupied with something. One day, he suddenly asked, "Hey, who was that woman in the blue dress at our wedding?" Considering there were several guests in blue, I couldn't immediately pinpoint whom he meant. "Which woman in a blue dress?" I asked, trying to recall. "You know, the one who gave a speech as your best friend," he clarified. "Are you talking about Laura?" I replied as it clicked that Laura had worn a blue dress. "Yes, that's her," Jonathan said, his tone reflecting some unease. "What's wrong with Laura?" I inquired, puzzled by his concern. "Oh, it's not a big deal," he dismissed. "The other day, I thought I saw someone who looked like her when I was on my way to work. That reminded me she was your best friend who spoke at our wedding." I was a bit baffled by Jonathan's sudden curiosity about Laura and his flustered response. But before I could delve deeper, he laughed it off and retreated to his room. Shortly after this conversation, Laura called me, bubbling with excitement. "Listen, Betty, my boyfriend's coming back to Canada next year," she shared. Laura and her boyfriend had been dating since high school, having known each other since they were kids. He had moved away during middle school, but they maintained their bond through letters and eventually reconnected in high school, where he expressed his feelings for her. I've always enjoyed Laura's romantic tales. Despite her boyfriend working at an international branch for a few years, they managed to keep their relationship strong and connected. "Well, do you think he might propose once he's back?" She pondered excitedly. "And then you guys will get married," I exclaimed, half teasing. Laura laughed and responded, "Oh, Betty, you're always jumping to conclusions. Just make sure to invite me to the wedding. I promise I'll give another heartfelt speech." "Of course. After the beautiful speech you gave at my wedding, I need you to do the same at yours. Just don't set the bar too high," I replied. We chuckled together as we sipped our tea, enjoying the ease and trust that flowed through our conversation. We had always been there for each other, ready to listen whenever one of us faced any issue. Around this time, I started noticing changes in Jonathan's routine. He began returning home increasingly late. "Working late again today?" I asked one evening. "Yeah, you think I shouldn't work or something," he retorted. Even after our marriage, Jonathan clung to his dream of becoming a voiceover artist. He was dedicated, juggling part-time jobs to fund his voice artist classes. Unfortunately, all his earnings from these jobs were funneled straight into his training, leaving me to cover all our living expenses. This situation made it difficult for us to save any money together. As time passed, it became clear that Jonathan was not willing to compromise on his aspirations for the sake of our financial stability. My concern grew as he put in excessive hours at his part-time job, which only added to our financial strain. "Hey, haven't you been working too much lately? They shouldn't be making you do so much overtime, even if it's just a part-time job," I mentioned one day. "I told you I'm fine. More money is always better. Just keep your opinions to yourself," he snapped back. By then, Jonathan had become distant, no longer even using my name when we spoke. Since our marriage, Jonathan had begun to address me merely as you, and I had expected him to speak to me with kindness and more frequently. However, his words were often harsh. His once gentle voice had grown rough, and his drinking had increased significantly. At times, his voice even sounded hoarse, which was concerning given that voice artistry demanded a healthy voice. Despite this, he seemed disinterested in discussing his health and increasingly avoided conversations with me. Eventually, he started ignoring me altogether, even when we were in the same room. Amidst these challenging times, Laura called me. She mentioned she had something important to discuss. Given my concerns, I suggested we meet up, eager for a conversation with Laura. We decided to meet at a cafe and chose a booth with a private seating area. Laura selected our booth carefully, a spot where the counter and staff could easily see the entrance. "You chose this booth specifically?" I asked, noticing her cautious approach. "Yes," she replied. "I wanted a spot where the staff could see if there was a suspicious person outside our door." "A suspicious person? Is that related to what you wanted to discuss?" I asked, connecting the dots. Laura nodded, her expression tense. She explained that ever since she left her job about a month ago, she felt like someone was following her. Now, she even felt watched on her days off. The reason she picked a booth with a clear view was that she suspected the person stalking her might try to eavesdrop on our conversation. "Did you talk to the police about it?" I asked, concerned. "I tried, but since there's no direct contact, they can't do much," she sighed. "What about your boyfriend? Isn't he coming back in a month?" I inquired, hoping she had some support. "I thought I'd discuss it with him too, but I wanted to talk to you first. Someone close by," she explained. I understood her need for immediate support. Laura hadn't managed to get a clear view of her stalker, making the situation even more unnerving. She was too frightened to discern whether her stalker was a man or a woman. I decided to discreetly watch from a distance to try and identify who was following her. During this time, I was struggling with my troubled relationship with Jonathan and found it hard to open up about it. But as I kept an eye on the situation, I made a shocking discovery. The person shadowing Laura was none other than my husband, Jonathan. Jonathan often claimed he had to work late, but I noticed that after his shifts, he lingered near Laura's workplace and followed her as she left. I was stunned to realize that the person causing my best friend such fear was my own husband. Witnessing Jonathan tracking Laura with a creepy, unsettling grin completely changed my perception of the man I had married. The man I had fallen in love with now seemed like a stranger, and the love I thought would last forever turned cold. I knew I had to tell Laura the truth. I urged her to move immediately for her safety. With the help of her colleagues, she arranged for someone to drive her from the underground parking lot directly to her new residence. We took these precautions to ensure her safety as Laura made her escape. Jonathan's frustration intensified when he realized Laura had moved away. Eventually, his pent-up anger erupted. "My parents are going to live here, so you need to go back to your parents' house," he demanded abruptly one day. I was taken aback by his sudden and unreasonable demand. "If you have a problem with that, then I'm fine with divorcing you," he threatened, losing his temper. Though I had my grievances and had even considered divorce before, the reality of our deteriorating relationship hit me hard at that moment. I couldn't believe that Jonathan thought he could just kick me out of our home. After all, I was the one paying $3,200 for our monthly expenses. I wondered if he even remembered that as I gave him a skeptical look, but he just snapped, "Just leave already. My parents can't move in if you're still here." "Why do I have to leave?" "I don't understand at all," I replied, frustration building. Despite my confusion and frustration, I calmly said, "Okay, I'll take everything I bought with me." Seeing me agree, Jonathan impatiently told me to hurry up and walked away. I immediately contacted a local buyback service, and the next day, they arrived at our apartment. At first, Jonathan smirked, thinking I was simply packing to leave. However, his smirk faded into shock as he watched the workers evaluate all our furniture and appliances. Once they finished, except for the items in Jonathan's room, a staff member handed me a quote. "The total value is $299,000, they said. I quickly signed off. "Okay, sell it all." Suddenly, Jonathan snapped back to reality and grabbed my arm. "Why are you selling everything? My parents are going to live here. How can they if there's no furniture?" I shook off his grip and countered, "What do you mean? When we got married, you told me you were broke because you were paying for your acting classes. You asked me to handle the rent, furniture, and living expenses. I never knew you were that broke. I feel deceived. Remember the $3,200 I've been covering every month? From now on, you'll pay that, and with your parents moving in, I bet it'll be even more." Jonathan went pale, realizing the gravity of the situation. He attempted to regain his composure quickly. "You thought talking about money would make me cancel the divorce? Who do you think you are?" "I've already gotten close to a rich lady," he said, striking a pose. I remembered how Jonathan had been following Laura recently. If he considered that getting close, then his perceptions were deeply flawed. Laura, who came from a wealthy family, her grandfather, a businessman, and her father, his successor, never flaunted her wealth. She looked just like me and our friends, not judged by her family's wealth. Yet it seemed Jonathan had learned of Laura's background and saw her as a better match, thinking perhaps that wealth made one person preferable over another. This notion infuriated me, but I knew Laura would never be interested in Jonathan. She had been with her high school boyfriend for years, and he was due back in the States soon with plans for them to marry. When I mentioned that Laura felt uneasy because someone had been stalking her daily, Jonathan was taken aback upon hearing that Laura found him creepy and that they weren't close. "I always walked Laura home," he protested. "You're lucky I didn't call the police," I replied sharply. "But I didn't know she had a boyfriend. He's been away. She picked me over someone she doesn't know." Jonathan tried to justify, misunderstanding their relationship. "They've been writing letters since they were kids and talk almost every day. And unlike you, who's only had part-time jobs, her boyfriend is successful. Even her dad likes him," I pointed out. Jonathan looked profoundly sad as I laid out the facts. It was clear that his delusions about forming a relationship with Laura were just that, delusions, and reality was setting in hard. As people arrived to take our belongings, he appeared somewhat relieved. "I guess you're all I've got now. You'll always support my dream of becoming a voiceover artist, won't you?" he asked, trying to seem unfazed. I responded with a steely gaze. "Sorry, I've already begun divorce proceedings. We should communicate through our lawyers from now on," I said coldly. Jonathan, perhaps thinking I still had feelings for him, clung to me. "Don't say that. Haven't we been getting along all this while?" "Getting along? Ever since you discovered my best friend Laura is wealthy, you've become distant and started spending time with her. Right after our wedding, I realized then that I had made a mistake," I continued. Jonathan broke down in tears. Despite being older, his childish weeping made him even less endearing to me. I could no longer bear to be near him. "Enough," I snapped. "I've also informed your Uncle Anla about the divorce. You know he's a tough man. Well, he's decided to work for him, which means I can no longer support your voice artist dreams. You barely practice as it is. It might be time to accept reality and stay away from Laura, or I'll call the police." With those final words, I left, determined not to look back. For now, I would stay with my parents, though I considered moving closer to my workplace if I found a suitable place. Meanwhile, Jonathan ended up working for his uncle as predicted. His parents, who had planned to rely on him financially after his marriage to Laura, also moved in with him, all working for the uncle. It seemed that exploiting others was a family trait. I felt relieved to escape that toxic environment. Age wasn't the significant factor, but I vowed to be more cautious in choosing my next partner. On a happier note, after settling things with Jonathan, Laura invited me to her wedding. She introduced me to her long-term boyfriend, and I genuinely wished them happiness. Hi, I'm Patricia. I live in a small space attached to my in-laws' house with my husband Willie. While I stay in this small area alone, Willie lives in the main house with his parents. Willie's grandfather originally built this small space as a personal getaway, but I've turned it into a cozy living area, about the size of a regular room. Before this, I lived in a regular apartment for the first 4 years of our marriage. Willie's parents, who were very close to him, suddenly wanted him to move back in with them. Seeing how much they wanted him there and how emotional they were, Willie felt he should go back. This took me by surprise and made me feel a bit overwhelmed. Willie and I met at work, where he started as my junior. We dated for 4 years while he was living with his parents, which made him miss home a lot. Even though he had his own place after we got married, his upbringing, where he was very pampered and didn't do much around the house, made him want to return to the comfort of his parents' home. When I suggested that we share the household chores, Willie seemed unsure and admitted he had never really done them before. I hoped we could split the chores equally, but Willie never really wanted to help. Every time I tried to involve him, he would act interested for a short time, then quickly lose interest and say, "This isn't for me, Patricia. You're better at it. You should just keep doing it." We both worked full-time, but since I had a higher position at work, I felt a stronger need to split the chores. Trying to get Willie to help often ended up being more tiring than just doing everything myself. Eventually, I found it easier to handle all the tasks on my own. Things began to shift when I started working from home. Willie was surprised to see me at home every day and seemed to adjust to this change. However, over time, it became clear that he didn't fully understand what working from home really meant. A few years into working from home, Willie's parents suddenly visited us and said they wanted to live closer to him. Seeing their emotional reaction made me feel alone and unsure about what to do. To support Willie's wish to be near his parents, we decided to move into their house. Throughout our relationship, Willie had always chosen places close to his parents, whether it was for renting an apartment or picking a job for me. Since I was working remotely, where we lived wasn't as important, but Willie's choices often meant we had to move and sometimes even leave our jobs. When we moved into his parents' home, Willie's mother thanked me, saying, "Thank you for taking care of Willie all this time. From now on, I will take good care of him, Patricia. You handle everything else." At first, I thought this meant I'd be free from taking care of Willie, but I soon realized her real plan. She started taking care of Willie's specific needs, making special meals for him, washing and ironing only his clothes, keeping his shoes and belongings clean, and buying things just for him. Meanwhile, all the other household chores, like cooking and laundry for everyone else, became my responsibility. Even though I was working full-time, I ended up handling not just our daily chores, but also keeping the larger family home clean. This new setup made me feel unhappy and overwhelmed. While Willie and his parents seemed happy, I felt like my responsibilities had only increased. One day while cleaning, my father-in-law approached me with an awkward request. He asked, "Patricia, could you help with some money?" I was confused, so I asked him to explain. He said he found it hard to ask Willie for money, adding, "Willie has worked hard, and it's tough to ask him for financial help." This made the situation even more complicated, showing how unevenly chores and financial responsibilities were divided. Willie and I had previously agreed to share expenses like rent and other costs. However, when we went shopping, Willie often convinced me to pay for various things, including extras like alcohol, clothes, and accessories. When I was hesitant, he would act immaturely and accuse me of being stingy. Despite our financial disagreements, I found some comfort in the fact that Willie usually left me alone with my daily routine. However, things changed when we moved into his parents' house. Unlike Willie, his mother constantly disrupted my work from home. She often insisted that I focus on household chores rather than my job, and would even come into my room and pull on my clothes, making it hard for me to concentrate. Feeling frustrated, I talked to Willie about it, expecting him to side with his mother. To my surprise, he listened and promised to talk to her about the interruptions. I hoped we could find a solution that worked for both of us. However, Willie's idea of a solution was quite different from mine. He suggested moving me to the annex, a separate part of their property, which felt more like creating a greater distance rather than resolving the issue. One day, I jokingly asked Willie if I could demolish the annex and build a new house there. To my surprise, he casually replied, "You can even demolish it and build a new house if you want." This offhand comment opened up new possibilities for our living situation, hinting at more independence than I had expected. Taking Willie's casual comment to heart, I started remodeling the annex to make it my own. I cleaned, renovated, and changed the wallpaper, putting a lot of effort into making the space comfortable for myself. However, I noticed that Willie never came to check on the progress. It became clear that he had no intention of moving into the remodeled annex with me. This realization hit me hard. I felt like an outsider in the family. There were times when I was alone at home while Willie and his parents went out for meals or events, often organized by his mother. It seemed like these outings were planned to exclude me, maybe even to push me away. Even with these challenges, Willie had given me full freedom with the annex, so I took the chance to make it truly my own. I threw myself into DIY projects, adding shelves and personalizing every corner. Interestingly, after I moved into the annex, neither Willie nor his parents ever visited. Even though they must have known about the changes, they showed no interest in what I was doing, making me feel even more like I was no longer part of the family. Living away from the main house and without Willie's mother constantly around, I started to enjoy my new independence. It felt almost like living alone, which was surprisingly freeing. I appreciated that being in the annex kept her from interfering with my work. During the renovation, I installed new locks and made sure the annex was secure, making it my personal retreat. I made sure that no one, including Willie or his parents, could enter without my permission. This newfound privacy made me wonder if this separation might actually be a blessing. However, it seemed my mother-in-law noticed my growing distance and wasn't going to let me find peace easily. Unable to put up with her behavior any longer, I found myself unsure about what to do next. As I settled into the renovated annex, her attempts to drive me away became more obvious. She started with small annoyances, like leaving trash in front of my annex instead of at the collection site. Sometimes she would host barbecues in the garden and deliberately leave me out, making sure the smell of the grilled meat reached my space. Despite her attempts to push me out, I couldn't help but find her efforts amusing. One day, she called me to the main house, claiming she had leftover meat and potatoes for me. Suspecting there was more to her invitation, I went over. When I arrived, she was alone in the living room and dramatically placed a divorce paper on the table. It was clear that her real intention was to force me into signing the document, knowing Willie would agree to whatever she wanted. With a smug look, she said, "Isn't it time you gave up? There's no reason for you and Willie to stay married. Get out, you freeloading unemployed woman." Her audacity shocked me, but it only strengthened my resolve. Thrilled at the chance for freedom, I eagerly grabbed the divorce paper and said, "I'm going to the city court right now." "Thank you so much." My mother-in-law, expecting me to resist, was stunned by my unexpected eagerness. After filing the divorce papers at the city court, I quickly packed my things. I went to inform Willie's mother that the divorce was finalized. I told her I would leave the renovated cabin as it was and that she could do with it as she pleased. My positive attitude about leaving seemed to surprise her, even though she wished me luck as I left. When Willie and his father saw I was really leaving, they were concerned and asked, "Are you going? What will we do without Patricia?" I smiled and thanked them for letting me use the cabin. I explained that, since we were now divorced, it was time for me to move on. As I packed up my things, I moved into a luxury apartment I had been planning for some time. Soon after I settled into my new place, my mother-in-law called. She sounded awkward as she began, "Patricia." I cheerfully answered and asked, "What's up? How's everything with the cabin?" She switched to a more serious tone, talking about finances. She mentioned that Willie had told her I was giving his father $5,000 a month. I confirmed this and told her that despite her earlier belief that I was an unemployed freeloader, I was actually gainfully employed. Her surprise was clear. She had thought I had quit my job. I quickly set the record straight, telling my mother-in-law that I hadn't just left my old job. I had actually become the president of a new company. This company was leading the way in remote work systems, and she seemed both disbelieving and confused. It hit me that Willie, too, seemed unaware of my professional success, showing just how distant we had become, both physically and in how we saw each other. It was clear he never fully embraced his role as a husband since moving in with his parents. Then she asked about my earnings, wondering if my new role had increased my income. I casually mentioned that I was making about $3 million. I exaggerated a bit to avoid getting into the details of my actual earnings. Seizing on this, she asked, "With that much money, could you lend us some? Your father-in-law was laid off and kept it hidden. We've been managing with the $5,000 you've been giving us, but neither Willie nor I knew about his job loss." This explained a previous conversation with my father-in-law, where he said it was hard to ask his son for money. I realized now that his earlier comments were likely a tactic to get financial support from me, assuming my new job meant I had a lot of money. This move, though clever, made the financial expectations of Willie's family clearer and how they viewed me. At our old company, they cleverly managed to get $5,000 a month from me, claiming it was for shared expenses. I didn't mind much at the time because it let me live peacefully in a quiet cabin. But now, being divorced from Willie, I had no reason to stay connected to his family. When I mentioned this, my mother-in-law urgently begged me, saying, "That's not true. To me and Willie, you're still family. Please come back." I immediately declined, knowing I would only be used again. Returning to Willie offered no advantages. We were now strangers, and it felt awkward for them to still consider me family when they had pushed me away. I'm really enjoying my life on my own now. It feels much like when I was married and mostly living alone. Except now I spend money on myself and don't have $5,000 siphoned off every month. I prefer this new life. I ended the call with a firm goodbye, surprised they thought I'd come back. My mother-in-law's plea seemed like a last-ditch effort. Willie's salary wasn't great, and he often avoided responsibilities, saying, "I can't do it," and passing tasks to others. This made him unreliable both personally and professionally. With his father laid off and his mother a housewife, they couldn't keep up with the large house and had to sell it. Now, all three of them are living in the cabin I renovated. It's perfect for one person but likely cramped for three. Since then, I haven't thought much about them. I'm enjoying my life peacefully, relishing the solitude and freedom that come with my new independence.
My name is Emily, a 33-year-old woman with a passion for neatness and organization. I work as an auditor at a large firm, and my friends often tease me about my obsession with keeping receipts and paying taxes on time. But I believe these little habits are what keep my life running smoothly. Let me tell you how I met my husband, Jake. It was at a party hosted by our mutual friend, Lisa. I remember that evening clearly. I was sipping a glass of wine and catching up with some old college friends when Jake walked in. He was a bit older, carrying himself with a confident stride and a charming smile. He worked as a manager at a food sales company. "Hey, I'm Jake. Do you mind if I join you?" he asked, holding a beer and looking directly at me. "Sure, I'm Emily. Nice to meet you," I replied, smiling back at him. We started talking, and I was surprised by how effortlessly the conversation flowed. We discovered a mutual love for hiking and a shared passion for classic rock music. A few months into our relationship, Jake invited me to his sister Sarah's barbecue. It was my first time meeting his family, and I was a bit nervous. When we arrived, Sarah greeted us warmly, but her 3 kids were a whirlwind of energy, running around and tossing toys everywhere. "Hey Sarah, this is Emily," Jake said, introducing me. "Nice to meet you, Emily. These are my little rascals, Mike, Tom, and Lily," Sarah said, barely holding on to Tom as he wriggled out of her grasp. "Nice to meet you all," I replied, trying to hide my unease. As the evening went on, the kids became wilder, climbing on furniture, throwing food, and yelling at the top of their lungs. I glanced at Jake, hoping he'd say something, but he just smiled and shrugged. "Aren't they just full of energy?" he said, chuckling. I forced a smile. "Yeah, they sure are." As our relationship progressed, Jake and I started discussing the future. He proposed to me during a hike on a beautiful hill overlooking the valley. It was simple and sweet, just the way I liked it. Our wedding was lovely, aside from one little hiccup: Sarah's kids. They were at it again, running around, making a mess, and being loud. Sarah didn't seem to care, and Jake found it amusing. "Look at them. They're having so much fun," Jake said, laughing as he watched them spill drinks and toss food around. "Yeah, but they're also making a huge mess," I replied, trying to keep my irritation in check. "Oh, come on, Em, they're just kids. Let them enjoy," he said, shrugging it off. I didn't want to spoil our special day by arguing, so I let it go, hoping things would improve once we settled into our new life together. After we got married, Jake and I decided to buy a house together. We had been living in a rented apartment, but we wanted a place to call our own. I was really excited about this new chapter in our lives. One evening after work, Jake and I sat down to discuss our finances and how we'd manage the expenses for our new home. "Emily, we need to figure out how we're going to split the costs," Jake said, leaning back on the couch. "Yeah, I've been thinking about that too," I replied. "I can handle the furniture, appliances, and some art pieces. What about you?" "Well, I was thinking I could buy you a new car. I know your old one is giving you trouble," Jake suggested. I was surprised and delighted. "Really? That would be amazing. My car is practically falling apart." "Yeah, I've seen it struggle. It's time you had something reliable," he said with a smile. We started house hunting right away. After a few weeks of searching, we found a beautiful house that we both loved. It was a bit pricey, but we decided it was worth it. Moving in was hectic, but I was excited about decorating our new home. I spent a lot of time selecting furniture and appliances, ensuring everything was high quality and stylish. One Saturday, Jake surprised me with a new car. It was a sleek, shiny sedan, and I was thrilled. "Jake, this is incredible. Thank you so much," I exclaimed, hugging him tightly. "You're welcome, Emily. You deserve it," he said, looking proud of himself. As we settled into our new home, everything seemed to be going well. We both enjoyed our jobs and loved coming back to our cozy house. But as time passed, little things started to bother me. Jake's laid-back attitude, which I once found charming, began to get on my nerves, especially when it came to household chores. "Jake, can you help me with the dishes tonight?" I asked one evening after dinner. "Em, I had a long day at work. Can't we just leave them for tomorrow?" he replied, giving me pleading eyes. "Jake, we can't keep putting things off. I'm tired too, but we need to keep this place clean," I insisted. "Fine, I'll do it," he said, sighing heavily as he got up from the couch. A few months into our marriage, I started worrying because I couldn't get pregnant. It was really stressing me out. I went to the doctor, and he told me to be patient, that it would happen when the time was right. Still, it was hard not to worry. Meanwhile, Jake's sister Sarah, with her 3 kids, was visiting a lot. Sarah lived in a neighboring state, but you'd think she lived next door with how often she was around. Every time she came over, she'd unload all her problems with her husband on me. It was nonstop. During dinner, while we were trying to relax, she'd be at it, talking about her issues. "Emily, you won't believe what John did this time," Sarah would start, rolling her eyes. Sarah, can we talk about something else for once? I'd ask, trying to steer the conversation away from her marital drama. Oh, come on, Emily, I need to vent. You're the only one who understands, she'd reply, not getting the hint at all. And her kids? They were a nightmare. As soon as they stepped into our house, it was like a circus. They'd run around, fight with each other, throw food, and just be loud. After a long week at work, all I wanted was some peace and quiet, but that was impossible with those kids around. Guys, can you calm down, please? I'd say, trying to keep my cool as they tore through the living room. Why are you always so uptight, Emily? Sarah would snap at me whenever I tried to get her kids to behave. They're making a mess, Sarah. I just cleaned the house, I'd respond, feeling my patience wearing thin. Well, maybe if you had your own kids, you'd understand, she shot back one day, her words hitting me like a punch in the gut. I was stunned by how insensitive she was, especially knowing how much I was struggling with getting pregnant. It felt like a slap in the face, and I couldn't believe Jake didn't say anything to defend me. Jake, are you going to let her talk to me like that? I asked, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. Emily, calm down. You're making a big deal out of nothing, he said, siding with her again. A big deal out of nothing? She just insulted me in my own home, I shouted, feeling the tears well up. I was so done. I couldn't keep living like this, constantly disrespected in my own home, with my husband always taking his sister's side. It was clear to me that something had to change, and soon. One Saturday, Sarah showed up with her 3 kids. She dumped them on me and said, Emily, I need a break from parenting. I'm going shopping. I couldn't help but chuckle when she said, parenting. The woman barely knew what that meant. Every time she's here, it's like a zoo. Fine, Sarah, but you better be quick, I said, already feeling the stress coming on. Thanks, Emily, you're a lifesaver, she chirped, grabbing her purse and bolting out the door before I could say anything else. Great, I thought, just what I needed. I was in the kitchen, trying to cook dinner. It's a long process and I like things done right, but with those kids running wild, it was impossible to focus. They were yelling, running around, and making a mess. Guys, can you keep it down? I shouted from the kitchen, hoping they'd listen for once. Of course they didn't. Suddenly I heard a loud crash. My heart sank. I ran into the living room, and there it was, my grandfather's antique Chinese vase, shattered on the floor. My chest tightened with anger and frustration. What the hell happened here? I screamed, looking at the kids who were now standing still with guilty expressions. We were just playing, one of them mumbled, not meeting my eyes. This vase is priceless. It's from my grandfather. Do you have any idea what you've done? I was livid, shaking with anger. Just then, Jake walked in, looking calm and clueless. What's going on? Emily, your nephews just broke my grandfather's vase. Look at this mess. I pointed at the shattered pieces on the floor. Calm down, Emily. It's just a vase. We can get it fixed, he said, shrugging like it was no big deal. Just a vase? This isn't about the vase, Jake. It's about respect. I'm tired of this. Every time Sarah comes over, our house turns into a disaster zone, and you don't care, I shouted, my voice cracking with frustration. Just then, Sarah walked in, bags in hand, looking annoyed. What's all this yelling about? Your kids broke my grandfather's vase, Sarah. Look at this mess. I pointed at the floor, trying to hold back my tears. Well, maybe you should have kept a better eye on them, Emily, she said, not even bothering to apologize. Are you kidding me? They're your kids, Sarah. I shouldn't have to watch them. I was furious, my hands shaking with anger. Jake just shook his head, looking annoyed. You're overreacting, Emily. Just drop it. Overreacting? I've had enough of this. I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter in my own home, I screamed, the tears finally spilling over. Jake just stood there, silent and cold, while Sarah smirked like she had won some sort of victory. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed out of the room, feeling a mix of anger, hurt, and betrayal. We'd been dealing with Sarah and her kids' chaotic visits for months, but I had no idea what was coming next. One morning, Jake was sitting at the kitchen table, munching on his toast when he casually dropped a bombshell on me. Emily, I need to tell you something. Sarah's getting divorced, and she's moving in with us with the kids for a few months. He said like he was just telling me the weather. I almost dropped my coffee. What? Are you serious? Our house is already a madhouse when they visit for a day. How are we supposed to handle them living here for months? She's my sister, Emily. She needs our help. You need to be more understanding, he said, looking at me like I was the one being unreasonable. Understanding? I've been more than understanding, Jake, but this is too much. Why can't we rent a place for her nearby? I'll even pay for the first month's rent, I suggested, trying to keep my cool. No, she'll be better off here. Plus, you can help with the kids and keep things clean, he said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I'm not a babysitter, Jake. I work too and I need to relax when I get home, I said, my frustration boiling over. Stop being so selfish, Emily. It's family. They need us, he said, his tone getting sharper. I'm not being selfish, Jake. I'm just asking for a reasonable solution. I'm not going to let my life be turned upside down, I said, feeling my anger bubbling up. Well, they're coming tomorrow evening, so you better get used to the idea, he said, standing up and heading out of the kitchen. I couldn't believe it. I felt completely blindsided and betrayed. The next morning, I woke up early, still fuming from our argument. I got dressed for work and went to grab my car keys, but they were nowhere to be found. When I called Jake, he picked up the phone, sounding way too calm for my liking. I took the car. It's mine, remember? I'm giving it to Sarah so she can use it for the kids. I was stunned into silence for a moment. You're giving my car to Sarah? Are you serious right now? It's not your car, Emily. I paid for it, and she needs it more than you do, he said, his tone matter of fact. That's the last straw, Jake. You've taken everything from me, and I'm done, I said, my voice shaking with anger. What are you talking about? Don't be dramatic, Emily, he said, clearly not getting it. I stood there in the hallway, holding my phone, unable to believe what was happening. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. How had things gotten so bad? I picked up the phone and called a moving company. Hi, I need a team to move some furniture and appliances today. It's urgent. The movers arrived a couple of hours later. I showed them around the house, pointing out the items to be moved. Take everything. The beds, sofas, chandeliers, even the faucets in the bathroom. The movers got to work, and soon the house started to look empty. I felt a strange sense of relief watching them carry out each piece of furniture. As the last item was loaded onto the truck, I directed them to my mom's house. Everything goes there. Thanks for the quick work, guys, I said, handing them a tip. With the house now bare, I grabbed my essentials and headed to my mom's place. A few hours later, my phone started buzzing. It was Jake calling repeatedly. I ignored the calls, feeling a mixture of anxiety and empowerment. That evening, there was a loud knock on my mom's door. I opened it to find Jake standing there, looking furious. What the hell, Emily? What did you do? He shouted as he stormed into the living room. I took my stuff, Jake. You took the car, so I took what I bought, I said, keeping my voice calm. This is insane. You stripped the house bare. Where are Sarah and the kids supposed to sleep? He yelled, his face red with anger. That's your problem, Jake. You made this mess, now you deal with it, I replied, crossing my arms. You're a thief, Emily. You stole everything. He shouted, waving his arms around. I didn't steal anything. Here are the receipts, I said, pulling out a folder and showing him the proof of purchase for all the furniture and appliances. He looked through the receipts, his anger shifting to frustration. Fine, Emily, if this is how you want to play it. I'll file for divorce, Jake said. I took a deep breath and handed him a stack of papers. Already done. Here are the divorce papers. Sign them, and we're done. He stared at the papers, his face pale. You're really serious about this, aren't you? Dead serious, Jake. I deserve better than this, I said, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. He took a pen from his pocket, signed the papers without another word, and handed them back to me. Fine, Emily, have it your way. I watched as he turned and walked out of my mom's house, the door slamming behind him. I stood there for a moment, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. It was over, and I knew it was the right decision. That night, I sat down with my mom and talked about everything that had happened. She was supportive and agreed that I had made the right choice. Emily, you've been through a lot. It's time you focused on yourself and your happiness, she said, giving me a comforting hug. Thanks, Mom. I just need some time to figure things out, I replied, feeling a weight lifted off my shoulders. Over the next few days, I started to settle into a new routine. I began organizing my new space at my mom's house and planning my next steps. It was a fresh start, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it head-on. I had reclaimed my life, and there was no turning back. After divorcing Jake, we sold our house and split the money. I decided it was time to really set up my new place. My mom's house was great for a bit, but I needed my own space. One afternoon, I was sitting in the kitchen with my mom, scrolling through listings on my laptop. Mom, I think I found a place that looks perfect. It's a small apartment downtown, close to work, I said, showing her the pictures. She looked over my shoulder and smiled. That looks nice, Emily. Have you called the realtor yet? Not yet, but I'm going to do that right now, I said, feeling a bit excited. I dialed the number and waited for the realtor to pick up. After a few rings, a friendly voice answered. Hello, this is Mark. How can I help you? Hi, Mark, my name is Emily. I'm interested in the apartment you have listed downtown. Is it still available? I asked, crossing my fingers. Yes, it's still available. Would you like to schedule a viewing? He replied, sounding hopeful. Absolutely. How about tomorrow afternoon? I suggested, trying to sound calm. That works for me. I'll see you at 3:00 p.m., Mark said before we ended the call. The next day I headed downtown to meet Mark and check out the apartment. When I arrived, he was waiting outside the building, a friendly smile on his face. Hi Emily, nice to meet you. Let me show you around, he said, shaking my hand. The apartment was small but cozy, just what I needed. It had a nice kitchen, a spacious living room, and a small balcony with a decent view of the city. This place is perfect, Mark. I'll take it, I said, feeling a sense of relief. After signing the mortgage agreement and getting the keys, I started planning my move. I wanted to make this new space my own, a fresh start. I spent the next few days packing up my things at my mom's house and arranging for movers to help me with the big stuff. On moving day, my mom and a couple of close friends came over to help. As we loaded the last box into the moving truck, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness about this new chapter in my life. Emily, this is going to be great for you. A fresh start is just what you need, my mom said, giving me a reassuring hug. Thanks, Mom. I'm really looking forward to it, I replied, smiling. We drove to my new apartment, and with everyone's help, we had everything unloaded and set up in no time. As I looked around my new place, I felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. It was the beginning of a new chapter, and I was ready for it. That evening, I invited my mom and friends to stay for dinner to celebrate the move. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes and laughter. Cheers to Emily and her new place, my friend Lisa said, raising her glass of soda. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate all your help and support, I said, feeling grateful. As the night went on, we talked and laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy and free. After the party, as I sat on my balcony looking out at the city lights, I thought about everything I had been through and how far I had come. I was proud of myself for taking control of my life and making the changes I needed. I heard from some mutual friends that Jake used his share of the money to buy a small apartment. Now he's living there with Sarah and her 3 kids. Jake's working 2 jobs to keep up with the bills, while Sarah still isn't working. They're fighting all the time. One day, out of the blue, Jake called me. I was surprised to see his name pop up on my phone, but I decided to answer, curious about what he had to say. Hello, Jake. What's up? I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. Emily, please just hear me out, he started, sounding desperate. I know I messed up. I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't realize how hard it was for you with Sarah's kids. I couldn't help but laugh a little. Really, Jake? You're realizing this now, after all this time? Yeah, I know it's late, but I'm serious. I've been thinking a lot, and I miss you. I miss us. Can we start over? I'm ready to move into your apartment and make things right, he said, his voice almost pleading. I chuckled, shaking my head in disbelief. Jake, you've got to be kidding me. You think you can just waltz back into my life like nothing happened? Emily, I'm serious. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll even take on more work to make it up to you, he said, sounding more desperate. Jake, I've moved on. I'm happy now. I'm not looking to go back to that mess, I replied firmly. Come on, Emily. We can make it work this time. I've changed, he insisted. I sighed, feeling a mix of pity and irritation. Jake, it's over. You need to focus on your life and your family. I'm not interested in going back to that chaos. Emily, please, I'm begging you, he said, his voice breaking. Jake, no. I found peace without you. I'm not giving that up, I said, standing my ground. Take care, Jake. I hope you find your way. I hung up the phone, feeling a strange mix of relief and closure. It was clear that Jake was struggling, but I couldn't let his problems drag me back into a situation I had worked so hard to escape. Later that day, I met up with Lisa for coffee and told her about the call. You won't believe who called me today, I said, rolling my eyes. Who? Lisa asked, raising an eyebrow. Jake. He actually begged me to take him back and let him move into my apartment, I said, shaking my head. Lisa laughed, almost spitting out her coffee. Are you serious? What did you say? I told him no, of course. I'm not going back to that mess, I replied, smiling. We spent the rest of the afternoon chatting and laughing, and I realized how far I had come. I had built a new life for myself, one that was peaceful and fulfilling. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. As I walked home, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction and peace. I had finally closed the chapter on that part of my life, and I was ready to move forward with confidence and joy.